right. So this is Weebinomics, meeting with Steven, and I thought about this earlier today. Both of us have horrendous last names to try and say out loud and have anybody understand. But if anyone's curious, I'm Scott Loudon, and Steven, your last name is? Yep, there it is. So we kind of had this conversation, I don't know, not that long ago, like maybe like a week ago even, where we're kind of like, okay, we want to review an anime. What should we start with? And funny enough, that you suggested Fullmetal Alchemist because it's one of those that I'd always like been suggested, but in the multitude of tons of other anime going on at the same time, I kind of just breezed past it and I was like, I'll get to it eventually, and maybe just needed that, kick to start it. So that was the original decision maker. And I'm curious, like when I asked you that, like what made you think about that as like the one to start with?
Felt like it had a lot of good ups and downs. There was a lot of emotional situations. I don't know. It was very. I think it kind of got the geeky side of me because there was a little chemistry going on inside there. I thought it was always cool.
Yeah, did you watch the non-Brotherhood version or no?
I did. I remember watching that on the DVD. I think someone let me borrow it back in the
That's
day.
so funny.
And that was like 2006, right? That one was a bit brutal. I remember at the end.
Brutal in what way? What do you mean?
Gruesome.
Oh, really?
It got real dark. It just switches. Like, whoa.
Is it like? I mean, it can't get like berserk gruesome though.
You know what? I can't say because I haven't gone into berserk.
Oh man, it is so good. I just got the 10th deluxe volume today, and I've been cranking through those because it's so good.
It's on the list. It's definitely on the list.
Yeah, it's one of those where I feel like we're skewing out Full Metal here for a second, but it's like it's so dark. Like it reminds me of like the Evil Dead series and like Ash vs. the Evil Dead or like Army of Darkness, which is one of my favorite movies. Like because it's like Guts just tearing people apart, but also like just horrendous, crazy things happening around him. Like I'm not used to, I think, reading in manga. Like I feel like they tend to be a little bit more upbeat, and so to have like really dark things like like rape and just like monsters that are willing to like rip people in half and stuff like that that was new for me, I feel like, in manga, but maybe that's just because of the mangas I've been reading. So
I see.
But yeah, so going back to Full Metal. So when we originally had the conversation, I was like, okay, I'll look it up, see how long it is. It was like 60-ish episodes, I think. I think 61 or 64 might be the actual count.
I think 700 something, no?
I mean, when I looked up Brotherhood, it just, I think, had, I can look up 2 seconds here. I think it was just in the 60s, and I was like, sweet, you chose a really approachable one for, 64.
Oh.
So,
must be 100 chapters in the manga then.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. And so I'm curious to see if from, your time from reading the manga, like, because you at this point know the whole story and I don't, right? So like I have certain like notes that I wrote down while watching it to be like, I wonder if this is going to connect and make sense to something, or if it's just something that like I think is a weird story choice. So our plan going forward was to just do the 5 episodes. And then I watched 5 more. So we got to 10.
Me too.
Which I'm glad. I think I was like, okay, we'll do 5 because I guaranteed like I wrote actual things for myself to like try and remember and see what I really thought of instead of just getting caught up and just like going wild with it. Mm-hmm. So we finished those. I will kind of go through my thoughts here, I guess. And then the other thing, that I find also interesting, and this is conjecture, I don't know how true it is, but there's a lot of times when I read like or watch videos being like, what's the most underrated or overrated, or like what's the best anime? When the Takashi from Japan asks people like a lot, like none of them ever say Full Metal.
Really?
Yeah, and I've heard, that it's much more popular in the States than it is in Japan. Again, I don't know how true that is. That's just like
Oh,
things that I've heard. So I would be curious why. And I know it's older, but like there are plenty of older series that are in Japan that are still very popular. I mean, Neon Evangelion is one of those examples, right? Where it's very popular. I mean, we played the theme song at a bar and the entire bar started singing it. So
yeah.
that was pretty crazy. Okay, so I guess before I start digging into the episodes, what did you either feel or like appreciate about watching it through this round for the first 10 episodes? Or was there things that like surprised you while watching it?
So far I'm just kind of going with the story. Nothing is coming out of left field. It's kind of going as I remember so far.
Okay. Do you feel like after watching like more manga through your life that going back it's still holding up is like that amazing story that you thought of it as, or is it starting to change because some of the more like modern anime is also extremely impressive?
I feel like it has its own vibe, its own beat, and that's what I always will appreciate about this story.
Yeah, I find like it tonally was more serious than I think
Okay.
a lot of the like I think of like Demon Slayer, right? Where like it has dark moments, but
Mm-hmm.
tonally Demon Slayer is pretty light. Like I feel like it still like has funny conversations and comedic moments a lot. And Full Metal does have those, but they are I feel like more sparse throughout. And the sad moments are, I would say, more often. Like in the first 10 episodes, there's been a few moments that I'm like, damn, like that's actually really sad.
It goes in
Um,
quick, doesn't it?
yeah, so it's like I think I appreciate that too about it being quick. Its pace feels nice. It's
It
not
does. It's
like
not slow. It's not draggy.
yeah, and it's like as much as One Piece, I'll eventually get to finish it. It's good, but holy, it just really slows the pace so much that it's like you can watch 10 episodes and feel like you're almost in the same place. Where in this, it's like okay, we've gone a good distance
Yeah.
in just ten
I was
episodes.
surprised how far it went in just 10 episodes.
Yeah, well, because it gets off to a start right away. I mean, it starts you in an action scene basically within the first minute,
Yeah.
um, which I thought was cool. But also, I made a note that like I'm surprised that it seems like most of the alchemy uses so far, at least, are pretty not standard, but like I'm not seeing creative uses of a lot of the power sometimes. Like the ice guy basically he can control water, it seems like, right? Because he can make it steaming, boiling,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
turn into ice, and he
That's what you
creates
said.
like, yeah, he creates like walls. And I'm like, okay, like I get that, but like, I just, I think of like Hunter x Hunter. Well, I know I'll get murdered for that, Hunter x Hunter. And it's like I think of Hisoka, right, as like one of my more favorite characters, and it's like his power is ridiculous, and he makes it like godlike. It's like I feel like you
Okay.
can take abilities. So I feel like because it's like Mustang controls fire, right?
Yeah.
The
Actually, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure if it does that. You'll get into that later on.
yeah, because I haven't really seen him really fight. I've only really seen him in that first episode where he tries to attack ice walls as a fire user.
Okay.
So I haven't seen much of what he can do yet. And then Armstrong, it controls Earth. I'm kind of a little bit confused on what his.
His one is a little weird. I don't quite. I just remembered what Mustang did, but Armstrong, I don't quite know either.
Yeah,
I don't think they quite explain it.
yeah. I mean, it probably. I mean, it's not. It doesn't seem like the show that's like JoJo's, where it's like this is their power.
Yeah, maybe it's like Earth based. It seems
Yeah,
like.
it's something along that, right? Because he
Yeah.
can do that. And then I thought the most interesting one I saw so far was the guy who could create like guns out of nothing.
Oh, but
That
that's special, right? I think Edward talks about that and how he's cheating.
he's cheating.
Yeah, so like the whole deal, right? The reason why they're in is it Lior?
Yeah, the city with like the
Lior,
church.
right? Um, You know, the
Oh,
gear.
okay. You're talking about the actual church guy who has like the fake alchemist ring. I'm talking about
Oh,
the state user who gets
who gets? Yeah. Okay, you're
killed
talking
by
about him.
Scar
Okay.
because he just like touches the ground and all of a sudden a bunch of cannons come out of
Yeah. Sorry,
it.
wrong, different gun guy.
Yeah.
Okay. That was pretty cool when I saw that.
Yeah, and I was kind of bummed that like he was out of
Instant.
the count, pretty fast. But yeah, so that was one of my thoughts going through the whole series. I feel like trying to figure out, and everyone kind of seems to have a specialty, and Ed doesn't, right? Like I feel like Ed. I mean, I haven't seen too much of what he can do. Like a lot of it, honestly, has been him making his arm into like a bigger sword-like knife thing.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see, like, it doesn't really seem like he has a static ability that it just is like one school.
I think they're trying to emphasize how much of a prodigy he is, how his brother and himself are just extremely smart.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone else, they kind of have this singular focus, this singular study, and that's all they did. So it's almost like he's more of a jack of all trades, seems like, and everyone else is just specialists. And I think the further you get into it, like when you get into Mustang's story, and then like Ed's training, you kind of see, that's why you kind of see the difference.
Yeah, and I love Alphonse being like the more mature, like mental person.
Their
like
dynamic is hilarious.
Yeah, like it's so interesting, and I hated the episode where he like doubts if he was real, and I'm like, oh gosh, like I can't even imagine.
To this, like I remember watching that. It still confuses me on why, like how that even came up. I don't know if it's like an actual thing that can be done, or if he was just trying to get into his head to win the fight.
I feel like it was to get into his head, because even the guy who does it had a life as a butcher, right? Yeah. So like he was a real person. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure. There's a few different things that I'm like, story wise, I'm like, I don't know if that makes a whole lot of sense, but it's an interesting thing. And again, it's, if you remember from the manga, I would have been curious if there was some other introduction to that.
No, from what I remember, the manga and the Brotherhood animation, they're pretty close 1-to-1.
That's what I've heard, that like because they redid the show, right? Because the original Fullmetal was different.
Yeah, the original, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah,
that's something else. But this one, I appreciate the fact that they just went, pretty much 1-to-1 on it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll kind of go into my episodic notes, I guess, and kind of see where your thoughts are on it. And some of them are notes that happened a couple different times, so those are probably like bigger ones. But one of the biggest, starter questions of every anime is the theme song, and I definitely had heard this one a lot before I'd watched the show. I just didn't know it was this show's.
Okay.
So as soon as I heard it, I was like, "Yep, that tracks." That's on like a hit list. Yeah. So it's like, it's definitely up there. I don't know if it's like top 5 good, but it's definitely an enjoyable starter. Yeah. And so like I tend to listen to it when it starts, unless I'm like really trying to pump through the episodes and skip time. And then the other note that I also enjoyed was I felt like the power scaling made sense, like in terms of how powerful they are. Like there seems to be a pretty clear hierarchy of like, okay, you're a state alchemist, so you should be strong, and you don't have these like godlike abilities unless you have like an alchemist stone to like really ramp it up, because the ice guy had the stone, right, to like make the walls try to go all the way to the central thing.
I think it was implied that he did have a philosopher's stone on him. I don't think they showed it to us exactly though. But
I think they do show it.
Oh, did they? I think, was it a ring?
Yes, and I think when he dies, it like disintegrates.
Okay.
Just like when the priest, when his disintegrates, it kind of like re-shows that situation happening, and kind of being like, okay, you don't have this ability like this intensely unless you have these, except for like Scar, because Scar seems very strong for not having.
Yeah, his alchemy is a little different.
Yeah. So that was the other thing I noticed, is that they bring up the Ishvalan War as this like really traumatic thing, and 10 episodes in, I kind of have an idea of what happened, but I don't have like I feel like a full authoritative history knowledge of what happened.
The first 10 episodes, there's just not enough information about the Ishvalan to go off of. I mean, there's that one little scene where you see all the alchemists come in and, they eradicate
and just
them,
like
right?
destroy the city.
Yeah, that was like the one thing you're really given, and it's kind of, what's going on.
Yeah. And so do you remember digging into that more like later on, or is that kind of what you get?
No, it definitely is a big part of the story.
Okay. So yeah, so that was one of the things for me that I put in like pros, don't know, and cons, because I was like, if I don't know, I feel like it ties to something, or it's giving to you in a piecemeal so that like later on things can add to it. And that was one of those for me. How did you feel about the actual animation style, or like how it looks?
That's what I had trouble with when I rewatched the beginning. It didn't feel as I thought it was gonna be better for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
and that may be because when I last watched it, towards the end of the season, the animation got better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just like the early animation what we're looking at. So right now I'm not too impressed. It looks like it's getting a little better, but it just feels like a little different than I remember for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks clean.
It's definitely clean. It's definitely not, up to the standards we're seeing nowadays.
For sure.
Yeah, right. But that's not a big
I mean,
deal.
it's 15 years old now.
Yeah, and it's still holding up really well, I believe.
Yeah.
I still like it. I really shouldn't be complaining. I think as it goes on, I think it's gonna amp up a little bit.
Yeah, I think animation is one of those like really interesting things too, because I think there are styles that everyone's like, ooh, I don't really like that. Like it's like obviously a lot of the CGI animes get hit with that because people are like, I don't love that.
Yeah.
Like the anime Berserk looks ridiculous.
Does
like
it?
I just like even the movement just it's clunky and I don't love it. But where like the Trigun remake, that's CGI, and that actually I thought looked pretty good.
Okay.
So I don't hate CGI. I just think like it has to be done well, and I think
to be done well, right?
So the animation for this, yeah, it looked really clean, but it didn't to me feel like it had its own style. Like I don't know if it feels like it has its own look, like compared to other shows.
I agree.
Right?
I wouldn't say it has a unique look. I think it's definitely more like when you look at Yu Yu Hakusho.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I mean, I watched that when I was a kid, and then I rewatched a few episodes after watching the live action just to kind of remember. Yeah.
I feel like it's just an upscaled version of that generation of art. I feel like, but nothing special.
It's so weird watching the older ones because it's like that style doesn't bother me at all rewatching it. And I'm surprised when something like Brotherhood comes out. Like if it came out today, I'd be like, oh, it doesn't. There's nothing like crazy about it, but like I still love that aesthetic. But I think it's because I grew up with it, right? So like the older, like Rurouni Kenshin aesthetic, I'm like, it looks fire. I still love it. But it's interesting that like we're less critical of that, maybe just because understanding like how animation has evolved, but we're like way less critical of those shows and that era than I think we are now, where we're like, you could look like Demon Slayer and JJK, and like why are you doing that? Like even Chainsaw Man, like I love the look of Chainsaw Man. It's super stylized. So yeah, it's an interesting one to like go back at. We're just like, there's nothing wrong with the animation of Brotherhood, in the long run. So it's like, why is it something that we have to think about? But it is.
Yeah, I know we said we weren't going to talk about the old Fullmetal, but I will say that I think there was at least one movie. Oh no, I think there were two movies. Well, one is like a post movie, and I would say that movie was pretty solid.
Okay.
It gave a pretty good closure, but the art style was pretty solid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does this series have movies as well, or is it just these episodes?
So there's this one instance. It was what episode was that? Probably episode 2 or 3, where they talk about how the brothers found the corrupt coal miner, the corrupt officer at the coal mine town. It was
Okay.
such a brief moment, thing that they said, and I think there's a movie based on that.
Interesting. Yeah, because I don't even remember that happening.
It was such a small, like 5 second. It was like on a newspaper. It's like, oh yeah, the Elric brothers did
Oh.
something at this town, or found this corrupt officer.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
that's a pretty cool story, and that kind
Okay.
of made me think. Like, that's why I feel like the Brotherhood is missing some things, but I don't know if I'm just looking at things out of order.
Yeah.
Because that town, I feel like, was pretty significant. Well, a little significant, but maybe not.
I mean, we can, let's see. We got Google. We can be like, is there a Brotherhood movie? Oh, that just did straight up Brotherhood instead of Fullmetal. Okay, it looks like, yes. So, The Sacred Star of Milos. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes, I just need a picture of that. Like,
Yeah. The Elric brothers pursue escaped convict Melvin Voyager.
oh, I wonder if that's more towards the. I hate to say original, but like the first
Well,
Fullmetal series.
yeah, I guess I didn't. I did write Brotherhood in it, but yeah, it might be more towards the original. I don't know. The film was first announced after the airing of the final episode of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood.
So oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't. Then it seems like I don't remember anything about this movie.
Yeah, man. There's so much going into it. I mean, I think honestly we'll get through the 60 episodes or whatever, and
Because I'm looking at pictures of it right now, and it doesn't make sense why it's post Brotherhood. It's just it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't say too much yet, unfortunately.
I think
Okay.
it was an okay movie though.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we'll have to check them out after we get through this, but so let's do, I guess, the breakdown of the first 5 episodes, and then we'll do the second 5. So it seems like, I don't know about you, but I feel like I went into it reading and people were like, "Dude, episode 4 crushes you," right?
Oh yeah, there's memes.
Yeah, so it's. I went into that. I haven't seen the memes, but
Oh man,
I don't think so. But I went into it knowing, okay, this episode is supposed to hit pretty hard. And so, like, looking at the first 5, right? You've got obviously the first episode, which is them going against Isaac the Freezer. The second one is the actual like history of them, like trying to bring their mom back, right?
Right.
And then the third episode, they check out the city and take out the priest.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so going off of that, you're introduced to at least Gluttony at that point, because I heard his name and I don't know what the main one's name is yet. I don't think I do. I don't think I've heard her name.
Oh, Lust.
Okay. So, and then we got introduced to Envy in the last few episodes as well.
Yeah, I think probably.
So
like 5.
Did we know that she was Lust already, or is that something that gets introduced later?
That's why I was kind of hesitant on saying it.
Yeah,
but it's not like a big deal in a way.
Well, you've gathered they're obviously the 7 sins, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That's gonna happen. So, yeah, I just wasn't sure because like I felt like they're really taking their time teasing them into the story.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, actually, you make a really good observation. They are kind of slowly coming out of the woodworks. Like, this is probably getting a little ahead of it, but like, what, episode 7? They really start popping out?
Yes, yeah. Well, is it 7 or is it? I think it's 8. It's the 5th laboratory.
Oh, is that where they finally when they run into Marcus?
Marco, I think, is 6. Road of Hope.
Okay.
But like the first time they meet them is in 8 when they
Yeah.
go to the 5th
It
laboratory,
is in the
right?
fifth
So
laboratory, yeah.
that's when they become really clearly a part of. I mean, we already knew that they were going to be important because they kept being in there.
Yeah.
But like they finally met, right? And they're like, you're an important sacrifice, and Ed's like, what the hell does that
No,
mean?
yeah. And it's pretty like from that point on, like before you see these people, right? Gluttony and lust. You think, oh, who's this separate group,
Enemy,
right?
yeah,
And then you go to the 5th laboratory where you're starting to understand, oh shit, things are kind of government related. And then you see those people there. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
what is going on here?
yeah. Yeah, there's clearly a lot happening. There's like a big conspiracy or something, right? Or so much secrecy, like one of the two.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I feel like even though I'm a sixth of the way through the series, like I kind of don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Because like
the first 10 episodes is not telling you anything. It's just straight. You're just getting the story, and I love it.
yeah, I feel like you're getting Ed and Alphonse's attempt to get their bodies back.
Right.
That's clearly like their entire focus. And the one story thing I will say that I love that they wrote in is Alphonse writing down the foods he can't wait to
Oh, that's
eat.
so cute. Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's such a human thing to be like, oh, I remember food and I can't wait to have it again.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and it's tragic because I think it's like, I love food, right? So
Yeah.
like, for me to be like, I can't eat, like, and I'm alive, like, that's terrible.
That's part of your soul right there.
And then the other thing I was confused, can Al not sleep?
I think that's what they discussed. They said a couple times. So yeah, he cannot sleep.
God, I like can't even imagine. He just sits there.
Yeah. There's this one scene where like I think his brother is sleeping and he's just awake, just sitting next to him. It's like, oh my goodness, he's been doing this for how many years?
Yeah, I was glad. Speaking of the how many years thing, because I was like, I have no idea how old these kids are now.
Yeah.
So at one point they finally are like, I was like, I'm 14 and he's 15. And I was like, thank you. Like,
do
finally
you remember
cluing me in.
what age Ed became a state alchemist? Was it 13?
I don't remember. I remember he was 11 when it started, the whole series, like the show. So that would, I feel like, make sense because he had to study for like a couple years, right?
To heal.
Yeah. So, but I mean, even so, 4 years is a really compressed time for as much as they've done.
Yeah.
And then does their father come back into the story?
Ooh, how far do you want me to go down?
Like, I just want to know if he becomes a conversation again.
There's
like
a conversation.
In the show. Okay.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, it's like we know he didn't die. We just don't know where he is, and he never showed up for his wife's funeral, and it's just I'm like, I feel like there's no closure there, so I'm like, there has to be some. It's kind of like Gon and his dad, right? Like you know that they're gonna have to meet again at some point. It felt like,
and I think this is part of why I love Fullmetal Alchemist. Is the storytelling is great. It'll just keep you hanging on until it finally happens. Like, bam, finally some closure.
Yeah. Okay, and then so also in that same vein from like those first couple of episodes, the other thing I found interesting was that like they're so ready for him to fight because I'm like, he's 15.
What do you mean by he's so ready to fight?
Well, like I feel like
what scene was that?
As a state, alchemists are like, yeah, go into the streets and like like do whatever. Like I'm like
I did. Yeah, I thought about that. Especially there was the one scene where he was in the hospital bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 lieutenants like reprimanded him by slapping him across the face. Like, don't ever do that again, or think about us. Like, trust adults. Like, okay, one, he severely outranks you, right? Like, you wouldn't do that to another state alchemist. You just purely took advantage of his age.
Yeah.
And that's for one. I wish there were a little bit. I don't know. I didn't like that dynamic where they just kept on treating him like a child, even though he has all this authority. There's a reason why he is an alchemist or state alchemist. And yeah, I agree. Like, just being 15 and just being thrown into, okay, these are your orders. You gotta do it now.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Well, like I think part of me too is like you have other alchemists. Like if he was the only one that could do it, I could buy it. I think a little bit more, being like, okay, like we don't have anyone who's capable of alchemy, and like we need you to do this because like you're the only one that can stop them, right? At that point, I'm like the age thing doesn't really, but like Mustang and Armstrong, like they're all of adult age and power, and
I
I
think
feel like able to handle those
I think
things.
that's one thing this the Fullmetal didn't go into much, where they did keep his adventure separated from his work. As you know,
Yeah,
like okay, this is Fullmetal, this Edward's story. We're gonna do that, but they didn't really tie into the consequence of him being a state alchemist very much.
yeah, that's fair. And it's like I feel like there's also been all these like civil wars, so I'm like curious how other people feel about state alchemists, because we know obviously like Ishval does not like them, right? Or
Yes.
the last survivor of Ishval, if that's what Scar is. But I feel like outside of that, we don't really have, because there's stuff going on in the world today that even if one side of the actual country itself feels like it's doing the right thing, other countries can say, hey, I feel differently, you're the same, right? And so I'm curious that hasn't gotten brought up, where people can be like, you guys destroyed an entire area.
Right.
Like, because I don't understand the Civil War aspect, I guess, enough to know if a lot of the people felt like it was justified or not. But I do always find that interesting, because it's like, I think military or any kind of special force is going to get viewed multiple ways,
Right.
no matter where they're from and what they do. So I'm curious that part has only been brought up from like a Civil War aspect, and it hasn't been brought up by like how maybe some local people feel about it.
And there's one thing to keep in mind is that this country is a militia state. But they don't go to. I feel like they don't go too much into the public's view.
Yeah,
But they really just focus a lot on these two countries. I don't even know what country that they're in. What is it called?
oh man, that is a good question.
The state of.
Is it the state of, like,
I
I
don't
feel
know. I
like,
just guessed it.
yeah, let's see, where you googling it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure what the actual, like, it could be like The Witcher, where it's just like the continent.
Oh.
Well, while you're looking that up, so let's talk about episode 4.
Okay. Oh, episode 4.
Yeah,
The fan
so
favorite.
yeah, I guess what are your
Ametris.
thoughts on the episode as a whole before we dig into anything particular?
Side note, going back real quick.
Yeah.
The continent is called Ametris, I believe.
Interesting. Okay.
Ametris. Okay. Okay. Going back to episode 4, theory. Well, I love how they suck you in by this is such a they suck you in by showing you how beautiful of an episode it's gonna be, right? How you got the cute little girl, you got the adorable white fluffy dog,
Yeah.
and they just rip your heart out.
Do you remember like the first time? Because I'm assuming the first time you saw that was reading it.
Yeah.
Do
Oh,
you
actually,
remember?
that might have been so. Like in the original animation, it actually did follow. I believe it followed the manga to a
Okay.
certain point.
Okay.
And then it did its own thing. So this might have been in the original also.
Okay. So do you remember like the first time you experienced this episode?
I think it was kind of traumatizing. Because like I told you, I think I saw this on a DVD back when I was probably in high school. And I don't think I've seen anything quite as gruesome, in the animation before. Or not as gruesome, but dark.
Just like sad.
Yeah.
Right, like not just like, okay, like like seeing someone do it, I think, to their own family. Because I think when I watched it, I knew going in that it was going to be a mess about it. But even knowing that, I don't think I put fully together that that's what was going to happen, which is surprising for me because normally I feel like I'm decent at picking that up. But I was like, I kind of waiting for like okay, like what was going to be really sad here. And I honestly felt like it was the first episode that, like in a lot of animes, they have those like comedy moments where the characters are like jumping up in the air and like, right?
Sure.
Like making noise. Sometimes it distracts me and I'm like, okay, like a weird moment for that. Like a fight scene would have been cooler than seeing them do that and run away.
Okay.
But in this episode with the dog, I was like, this is the first moment or the first time I'm seeing them use comedy where it still makes sense within the vein of the story. And so I was like, and I have a dog, right? So I'm like, I love dogs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this comedy's making sense. And so even knowing that this episode was supposed to be sad, I'm like, okay, I know something's going to happen. But I did not put together that he was going to merge them.
Right? So he goes like, oh, do you want to play with daddy tomorrow? Like, I'm like, oh, shit.
So it's like, I feel like an amazing episode. And I think going into it blind, not knowing that it was going to be that kind of an episode, I think would be like, holy Christ. But,
when Ed and Al came back to the house that day, did you know that
I think because the mood tone had shifted, and so like you knew going back like something was really wrong, and like obviously you're going through with him trying to create amalgamations of things, and so I think at some point you're like, oh, this is not going to be good. Like either she was I didn't know exactly what was going to happen, but I thought like either she'd be dead, or like he'd done some experiment and had like ruined everything, or but I guess my brain just did not go to the point, especially with the wife. I did not connect the story, but I did ask a lot of questions where I was like, he's talking about this wife like it was like so long ago, and it feels very recent. So
2 years,
yeah. So I was like, I really was like, what is it? Like I literally wrote that down in the notes as like a con, because I'm like, I have no timeline of when this wife left, and I'm like, I don't understand why she left. So
or why even bring her up?
Yeah, so like its connection to the Chimeras made a lot of sense. I just wish my brain had put that maybe a little bit more together faster. But it hit me because I didn't put it together until that moment, until I saw the daughter and Alexander, amalgamation. At that point, I was like, oh yeah, his wife was definitely the one who like was like, kill me. So I was like, and I think it was just sad to see the daughter. It was honestly, I feel like it was sad because seeing Ed's hopelessness, I think that was the first time you saw him feel that way. Because even with his brother, he's still like, I can figure this out. And with this situation, he immediately was like, we're screwed. Like, there's nothing you can do.
They both were like, they both knew that they were screwed, yeah.
And I think that's what made it sadder, was like seeing someone make such a bad decision and it being so irreversible.
Yeah, you kind of start seeing the limits of their alchemy. Even though you can go one way, they couldn't do it the other way. Yeah,
and I think that's probably a really good like thought there. Is like, I bet you this was like that they can't bring their mom back, but even that, it doesn't seem like they can't. It just seems like they'd have to do some crazy stuff to do it.
Yeah, well, Edward was saying it, right, when he went into the truth. Before he got yanked out, he said, I saw how. I just need a little more. And so that it always made me wonder. Well, I guess they figured it out, like per Marco's notes, right?
Ingredients.
So maybe that was the way, or I don't know. That's what I like to think.
Yeah, I'm surprised that because he figures out, obviously he gets the recipe, right? They decode it or whatever. And he's like, oh, it takes that. And I was like, so did that not apparently happen when he learned the truth, right? In that purgatory-esque situation. So yeah, that's another good question. So my final thoughts on episode 4 were super sad. And super vital to, I think, their story and seeing who they are as people. But I think also going into it knowing it was going to be a soul crushing episode kind of lightened it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it was definitely one of their stepping stones in terms of stepping stones in their maturity, in how they mature.
Yeah. And then to finalize the first 5 episodes is the introduction of Scar, right? So, who in that episode you have no idea why he's doing what he's doing, and I still to some degree kind of don't 100% understand, other than just straight vengeance.
Right.
You know,
Okay, here we go.
yeah. So I liked it. I thought it was good tonally, shifting away from the really sad episode, to kind of see it go back to action, but to see it's also interesting because I guess it is somewhat sad in that at one point Ed is like, yeah, like this is the end.
This is it.
Yeah.
Clearly it was outclassed. Like, shit.
Yeah. So I thought that is interesting to see that. But I think the thing I loved the most about that was the way that Al comes back to him later and is like, if you die, it's pointless.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to survive. Like otherwise there's no point to any of this.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really good. And so, yeah, I think they use the episodes really well. There's really no filler. There's nothing that doesn't feel important to the story. And I think as someone who like went to film school, I'm like hyper critical of that situation where people like would write something in a script and then it never gets brought back in. And you're like,
okay, yeah.
Especially in the art of filmmaking and in animation, I imagine, because it's extremely expensive to do anything, right? Sure. So like if you have a scene that's just wasted, you're like, you just threw away money.
Yeah.
Like, and it didn't bring anything to the story. Like sometimes there's like slow moments that are like story builders, like for like lore, and that can make sense.
Okay.
But in a movie, you don't do that technically usually because you don't have the time for it usually.
Sure.
But for like a season like this, there's so like the episode when he goes to get his arm remade, right? Like that's a lore building episode.
Yes. Look back to their past essentially.
Their history. Yeah, and I felt like I questioned why Armstrong didn't know all these things about Ed until he went there, right? Like he didn't know about the home, he didn't know what he had sacrificed, he didn't know any of these things. So it was lore building that he had joined the State Alchemist as this young prodigy, but nobody knew his whole goal or purpose.
Yeah, which I feel like is he had to hide it, right? He can't just be like, I'm gonna get my body back. Oh, what happened to your body in the first place? Well, I committed some taboos.
That's true. Right? Yeah, because some people have to know, right? I feel like Mustang has to know.
Mustang did find him, and I think they.
That's
told
right.
him,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's right. Because Mustang found him in the town.
Yeah,
that's right.
Just by accident or something. It's like, damn. But I kind of like the fact that no one knows much of anything of each other. But I don't like the fact that everyone's so loose-lipped so far.
Okay. That you like don't feel like it's a secret that needs to be like actually held in.
Yeah, like you just told 2 nobody lieutenants that the ingredients here, Philosopher's Stone, is human.
Yeah.
And you told them to shut up, and then they didn't.
And then immediately
when their major came out. But then, like, essentially, Edward is a major, so like that should have been enough to curb Armstrong's command, or at least kind of like. I wouldn't know how that works, but I would assume if a major told you not to say anything, you wouldn't say anything to another major.
Yeah, I mean that's such an issue because I just don't even think about Ed's rank. I honestly I couldn't have told you what it was. Like,
well, that's the whole thing with being a Saint Alchemist, right? It's just once you're an Alchemist or Saint Alchemist, you're granted the rank of major, and that's why, like I said earlier, they just treat him too much of a child.
Yeah.
In this military setting.
Maybe so. I mean, because that can't exist in like our modern military. I mean, to that extent, like you can't have a 15-year-old, right? You could have like a 18-year-old or something that would be like maybe given command for something. But
but it's kind of the same trope of adults or maybe like Asian culture, how we don't respect younger individuals, right?
Yeah.
Or give them the respect that they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still definitely like there's still like a hierarchy just for age, right? So that was at the beginning of the second 5 was them finding Dr. Marco and him giving them the hint of where he left his notes.
It was so hilarious and stupid at the same time. Like, I'm not gonna tell you, get out of here. And he runs out to the train. Oh, here's where my notes are. Like, dude.
And like no reason of why he would feel that way because I mean I guess Ed tells him the situation, but like in that moment, you don't see him contemplate it at all. And so for him to just out of
I
nowhere
don't
come
know.
out of this, the side of the screen and be like, all right, here's the location.
Your story got me.
Yeah. Plot device. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving you forward.
Yeah.
So I wish there would have been something else maybe there. And that's where I would be curious if you dug back through the manga, if there's something else there that like maybe the anime is like, okay, we don't have time to animate that. So we're just going to jump.
Mm-hmm.
And then Hidden Truths was them discovering the ingredient.
Yeah.
I loved the librarian. I'm like,
oh yeah,
honestly, she might be my favorite side character.
Oh, she's gonna be best girl. Is that best girl for you?
Like, I love that she literally worked in a library and she couldn't hold a job because she just kept reading.
Yeah.
like that's one of the funniest situations that I also like. It's so endearing to me because I love reading. So, like, I imagine being surrounded by it all the time. You're just like, I just want to read more. Like, I can't even work. But then she crushes writing every single note out.
Talk about
for however long that took.
So yeah, 5 days they were saying, right? She was oh, okay.
So like that to me was like the funniest episode, and I think in that same episode was a little surprised that they were so devastated by the ingredient.
Like, go ahead.
I'm like you didn't think that was possibly a part of this? Like it didn't seem that much of a stretch to me that would be what was required, and it seemed to really surprise them.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like it definitely does go against their morals, and they're trying to go, a different route. Hopeful that it was going to go that way, but apparently this is it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of see where it turns, but I think that episode was not as much of a big reveal as I think it was supposed to feel like. Like, I don't know if it was as successful as they thought that moment of clarity would be, because I'm like, yeah, it seems you've told me you need to get something to you need to give something to get something, right? So like it makes sense that you have to sacrifice a human to like make this all powerful ability stone or whatever. Right. So it didn't seem super surprising to me. But then the introduction to the next episode was like feels like to me a humongous story moment, because it's the first time that Ed meets the Sins, whatever. I don't know what that group is going to be called, but I just am calling them the Sins right now, right? Because that's what we know them as: gluttony and apparently lust and envy.
Did they reveal Envy's name?
Yes, they did, right? Because at one point, Envy is like on the balcony with them, and they refer to them as Envy. Okay. So, and I can't. I mean, it doesn't matter, but I couldn't tell if Envy was supposed to be a guy or a girl or like an anything. Like, I wasn't sure.
They'll get to it later.
Okay, because like contextually, it was like I thought they said him at some point, but then like look wise, I was like, it feels like a female character, but like honestly, like none of those things mean anything. So
I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm not sure where, and it's like, I don't know what they are. Like, I know they're Sins, but like, I don't know what they are. So I'm like, I have no way of judging this right now to understand it. So, but did you find the fights interesting? Because that was also the episode that introduced Alphonse thinking that he could be not real.
Right.
So what did you find those fights interesting? And I know we had talked a little bit earlier that it was weird that he bought into the idea that he wasn't real so much, but
yeah, Al's fight. Well, it was definitely one-sided, right? He was kicking his ass for sure.
Yeah.
If anything, I was kind of let down with Ed's fight, just because, I guess we don't know now. Well, from what I know, I thought he would have been a better fighter at this point. But I guess he's being 15 years old or whatnot. He just, I thought he would have been better. But
I'm just surprised that he keeps using like the sword arm thing. I'm like, you're choosing to do a weapon that makes you have to get up close to them when you have all these alchemy abilities.
That's one thing that does kind of bother me too. Like, why are you weren't that great as a close arm combat person.
Yeah. You're not Armstrong.
That's true.
So I find that really interesting. I think it definitely was not a super memorable fight.
Yeah.
Even with like the reveal that they were, people that were bonded to suits of armor, I kind of was like, like there's nothing in that fight itself that made me be like, oh, okay, that will be a cool moment to look back on.
The tripper thing was the double soul. I won't say double soul, but there were 2 souls in that.
Yeah, the 2 brothers in the one
was a
suit
pretty
of
cool
armor.
trick. Like,
yeah,
they can do it that way too.
I'm trying. So he gave up his arm to bond his brother's soul, right? Okay, because it's always interesting because like obviously these ones were made, and I'm curious what was needed to sacrifice them because I wonder if it was just their bodies were sacrificed.
I assume it would be.
But yeah, I mean, we're probably never.
Well,
gonna find
it would have
out.
been. It would have been the caster's body, right? Which would have been weird. So
well, theoretically, but like Ed's body was already gone when he like brought the soul back to the suit. Whereas theoretically, if you had a body in front of you, I feel like you could be like, all right, I'm sacrificing this body to bond it to the suit.
Yeah. The one thing I didn't understand about Al's soul bonding. Oh, maybe okay. You just said it. It's because his body wasn't there. Well,
yeah, and I don't because his like body completely disappeared for some reason.
I felt like it's not like they got the body back, right? He was only. That's why I don't understand. Like Ed already knew how to bond the soul to the armor, so why did he have to sacrifice his arm to bound Al's soul to the armor?
Because I think that because his brother's body wasn't physically there, he had to give up something. He had to
go get the soul to bond it.
I think. Okay. I mean, I'm kind of reaching on that, but that's what my assumption was that because he didn't have anything to physically sacrifice of his, because like it wouldn't have made sense for him to have bonded his brother's soul if his brother's body was there. You know what I'm saying? Like he did that because his brother was gone. Yeah.
But just kind of trying to bring it back to the guards, the laboratory bias guards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what practitioner or alchemist would have been willing to sacrifice their own limb to bring back a butcher? But then, I think you made the point that Al's body was gone, so he had to go find his soul, and then Ed could bond it to the armor. Whereas the guards, they just use their own bodies or sacrifice the criminals' bodies.
But it's also just, I think we have this feeling that like if you have a philosopher's stone, you can kind of
there's that too.
Get around things you don't need stuff. So I mean, and clearly that is a focus of what that Fit Laboratory is trying to make a philosopher's stone. So. Or at least that's what my assumption was, because he even asked about it to Lust or whatever, and she's like, "Yep."
Well, it's gonna make sense, right? Like you have he saw the sigil on the ground.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, that's for making stone. And the guard was like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah.
But I mean, so.
But yeah, so going from that episode, right, and that being the major introduction, I was like, okay, that was that feeling shifted of like these are major players, and again, I'd already to some degree felt that, but that now was blatant that somewhere down the line this is like the real story. And so it goes from that into Al dealing with his confusion in the last 2 episodes. And meeting Winry again, who I'm not 100% sure. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention for like 30 seconds, but I don't understand exactly. She just came up to like do repairs, right? Like they message her and they're like, "Hey, we need you to come and do repairs," and that's why she gets brought back into the story.
Yeah, so you're talking about like episode 9-ish.
9 and 10,
Essentially, he was Edward was just too beat up, so he couldn't go back home. So yeah, that's why he made the call for her to come on service him.
Okay. Yeah, somewhere, and I must have just like looked at my phone or something and missed that.
It was like a minute.
Yeah. And then obviously he's getting close, or it's not he, sorry, Winry's getting close to the Hughes family during those episodes while she's
Yeah.
helping
Yeah.
out. And so, like, you know, kind of a lore building. But then, what I would probably consider more tragic was seeing Hughes die
Oh my
than
goodness.
even episode 4.
That was rough.
Like, because you've now gotten attached to this
You
character,
did, yeah.
and I was like, that to me felt more impactful, especially story wise.
Because he clearly was a big part of the story and the lives of a lot of the individuals, players of
Yeah,
who we've seen so far.
yeah, and it's like I just felt like you'd seen tragic things happen to people outside of the scope of the immediate group, but you really hadn't seen the immediate group get messed up.
Hurt, yeah.
And so I think it's kind of like the George R. R. Martin thing, where it's like everybody's possible
Free
to
die.
Mm-hmm. And I think while Hughes is still not like Mustang or Alphonse or Ed or whatever, he's still important enough that it was like, you made us get built, like bonded to this person, and then you're like, they dead, and it was like a sad way to see it too, because you don't fully understand, because like I guess it's like another plot device is that he's trying to call Mustang, and I still don't know what he was going to tell Mustang. Right, and I'm assuming that will come out, but
it's going to come out, yeah.
So it was like it felt like a really good cliffhanger for me, which sucked because I was like, "Fuck."
20 more episodes.
Yeah. So I was like, I already said I was only gonna do 5, and I did 10. Yep. So it's like, I gotta break this down a little bit. But I felt like that was good, because I felt like the thing with Alphonse disbelieving was interesting, but I was like, that's gonna be. I know that they burned down the house, so like they don't have like pictures, but like. I feel like this isn't going to be hard to bring him back into reality of just being confused. But I thought it was an interesting plot device. I just don't know if it needed to get him. I felt like it would have been more believable if he was like, this weird thought got brought up to me. Like, is there anything to this? Like, versus him being like straight depressed.
Wait, but I lost track of what you were saying.
So like when Al is given the thought that he could possibly just be like,
talking about Al. Okay.
Yeah, like if he could just be like fake, right? I think it would have been just as interesting for him to go to them and be like, hey, am I real? Like, instead of it being a depressive episode, being like, I'm genuinely curious. Like, I don't remember having something physical to prove that I'm real. I have
these memories that could be
I don't have a body, right? So he's like, you could just be telling me, and like I think it would have been interesting to see it as an introspective like thought process, and then a curiosity rather than manic depression.
Okay.
That made everyone be like, what is happening with you, dude? Like, but I also understand being like, he's a kid still, right? So he like doesn't maybe know how to approach those things. So
14 years old, I get it. Second armor. Yeah, it kind of like throughout the whole, I think from what we've seen prior to that episode, you don't really see that anxiety build up in him until those 2 episodes. Oh, where did this come from? So it must have been building up in him for a while, I guess.
Yeah, and if it wasn't brought up in any way, so it just seemed like quick. And I guess those are always the questions as like someone creating a story that you have to choose. Like, okay, is this something I needed to have planted the seed, or is this small enough that I'm hoping I can just have this amount of time for it? So it's always interesting with anime, because they do have the ability to have more time than, let's say, like a 2-hour movie. Like in that, you're very compressed for how much room you have.
Gotcha.
But that's why it drives me crazy though when you have like shows that just have entire like sections of episodes that are just like meaningless. And I'm like, okay. But okay, so that ended the first 10. What were your impressions after finishing it, of like going back and seeing this again, or, after reading the manga?
Just that first episode, first 10 episodes, just you can feel the snowball starting to roll. The story is starting to pick up. Like the groundwork is there. Everything's gonna come back again, and I'm pretty excited to go further.
Yeah.
It's gonna hit.
If you had to like separate it into like, let's say 10 episode blocks, right? And this would be like the first sixth,
Okay.
right? In terms of as far as your memory can still hold on to what it was like, where would you chunk this first 10 episodes in like your favorite of tens?
Oh, sure. I see what you mean. I know it is important, but it was slow, and I didn't like the. It was just slow, So
Yeah.
I would say it was the least favorite of the six.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
think it's only going to ramp up better from here?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Sweet. Well, I'm stoked. I'm like looking forward. I really like it. I think pacing wise, like it's an introduction to the story, but I wouldn't say it's like slower than One Piece.
Oh, for sure. It's the speed is good, the story is good. It's definitely laying down the foundation, which I'm totally cool with. And compared to the rest, it's just
slower than the rest.
It's just slower than the rest. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, if that's the pace for the first 10, then I'm excited because I feel like the rest of it will be really good. Pace wise,
you'll be really confused later on.
Oh gosh. Okay. I mean, sometimes it's a good thing. Like I kind of do love shows. There's a part of me that like loves it when it's like really. I'm like, okay, I need to go read about this and like see if I'm feeling the same way or misunderstanding or understanding it and being like, that's weird. And I like when you can do that with people. Like sometimes I feel like you don't share watching something with somebody else, and you're going to the internet, and then you're just getting like conspiracy theories and all sorts of crazy stuff, right? Versus it's kind of nice when you have like a group of people that you can be like, hey, did you catch that? Like, did that make sense? Like, and I like being able to piece those things together and be like, oh, I didn't even think about that, and then all of a sudden it clicks, That's an enjoyable thing for me. All right, well, going off of that, are there any other animes that you are currently watching or catching up on? I know Demon Slayer and My Hero start coming back here in the next couple weeks.
I'm a huge My Hero fan. I'm not. I've kind of been out of the anime scene, manga scene for a little while, so nothing on the list right now. I'm a huge One Piece fan.
Yeah,
but that just takes, that drags. So
but you're caught up on that, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, you're still current. So, and then did you watch JJK or no?
I am going to rewatch that. I think because they just finished it last season, right? So
they finished the second season. I think
I just finished season 1 a little while ago, and I think I was supposed to watch the movie first and then season 2.
Yes,
but
yeah.
I think what
that
I
is
did was
the order. Yeah,
I think I watched like part of season 2 and then the movie. So I'm just gonna go in order this time. Finish it.
Yeah. Okay.
But other than that, no, there's not anything I'm looking forward to right now. Is there anything that you're looking at?
I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to My Hero and Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
But my fear with Demon Slayer is at the beginning of every season is so slow.
It is very slow.
So I'm kind of like, do I let it get like 5 episodes and then crank through it? Because it's like
I always just wait.
Yeah, it's like I love the show, but man, the beginning of the seasons is like a slugfest.
Is Demon Slayer is Demon Slayer coming back this week?
Yeah, May 4th, right? So not this week, so probably 2 weeks.
Oh, May 4th. Oh, I see.
I think it's May 4th. And then I think My Hero is either a week or two after that, and or vice versa. Either My Hero's
it's the
first.
Same. So right now, I heard in April, what they're doing with My Hero is they're doing like 4 episodes of recap. And then when the first season in May comes, that's the real start of the season.
Well, yeah, it's almost May, my man.
Yeah, I know it's in like 2 weeks, but like I always wait. I just let it sit for like until it's done, and then I'll just binge it.
I can't because I know it's gonna be Star and Stripe, and I'm like, I can't wait.
I can't do the week thing. It's so painful.
Tough, dude. It is. It's brutal.
I just ignore it.
Did you watch Solo Leveling?
No. I think is it still going, or is the season
done? Oh, okay. It's finished. Yeah. Well, its first season is finished.
Yeah, maybe I'll watch that. I'm
Yeah.
huge. I love isekai. I love that genre.
It's not the same. It is a
Oh,
different type of isekai, like
okay,
because I mean it's I won't over explain it. My whole view of that show, I watch it because I'm like I won't critique things unless I've seen it.
gotcha.
Like I just but it is so hyped. Like everyone is like, this
It
is an
is.
amazing show,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, it's good. Like it's entertaining. Like to me, Hell's Paradise was way better.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Ooh, Hell's Paradise is fire.
Is it? Okay. Okay.
Yes,
I'll put that on my
yes,
list.
and it's only like 12 episodes for the first
Oh,
season. It's
no.
another short season.
So, would you say it's kind of on par with JJK? Because I know that we were talking about it one day, and I kind of agree with you're saying that the story is mid. It's
For
good.
JJK.
Yeah. The
Yeah,
animation is fire. I give it that. But the story, I feel like what was that other ghost anime that I told you about?
other
Kenkashi
ghosts.
something?
I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, JJK, I've heard from everyone that I talked to that is diehards on it. Is
Yeah.
that because I only watched season one, right? Because I'm like, it's 20-ish episodes. Like, it's
Gotcha.
not a short season. And I was like, yeah, I'm like not super into it. Like, I have certain characters I really like, but I was like, this doesn't pull me the same way. And then everyone's like, you have to watch season two. Season two is where everything happens. And I'm like, okay. But like, I haven't yet been able to like force myself through it because I'm so distracted by other shows. Like, I finally watched the Jotaro season of JoJo's. So,
Oh, JoJo. That's a
yeah,
good
and
one.
so that was the first season of JoJo's. So I can understand it because I didn't love the first like two parts of JoJo's,
It's slow.
but once Jotaro hit, I was like, "Nah, man."
Jotaro was my
Right?
boy.
Well, it was like they got the stands, and once I got the stands, I
Okay.
was like, "This is way more interesting to me
Oh,
personally."
okay.
Um,
That
but yeah,
that other anime I was talking about was Keishi.
okay,
I
I'll have to
thought
check
that
it
was
out.
I thought that was really good, like spirit demon slaying um manga. I think they
Okay,
made an anime adaptation, but I didn't look at it.
well, send me the name of it to my Instagram. Um, and then yeah, so we'll my thought process, and we can see how this goes, is like theoretically this being weekly, and kind of just keep chunking away on it and see how that goes, and then we can have other people come in as well and see kind of what their thoughts are as well.
Yeah.
It will be under Weebonomics. I'm hoping to have it like on Spotify, and all the other like places to go, and then we're also going to start making shirts.
Oh
So
yeah.
that'll be kind of fun. I got to figure out some like witty, stupid crap to put on shirts.
It's funny.
Yeah, so that's the thought process going forward, and we'll keep chunking away through Full Metal, and then as the other shows come out for weekly stuff, we'll probably talk about that as well as my assumption, and either do side shoots or whatnot. Is there anything else though that you wanted to talk about or bring up for today?
No, I think I'm good. This
Nice.
is a
Well, I'm
great
stoked.
first show.
Yeah, and I mean, great first like thing to start with.
Yeah.
So because I needed the push to watch it because it's been so many years I've been suggested to, so I'm finally like, all right, and I'm enjoying it a lot. So all right, man. Well, I will let you go, and then hopefully we will be back next week for episodes 11 through 20,
If not more.
if not more. Yeah, episodes 11 through 40. All right, man. Well, I will. I'll talk to you soon. All right, later.